my success, but if that's what you want to call it, is built upon years and years of failure. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that today. I'm okay with making a mistake, making a bad call today. It took a long time to get there, but
Yes.
here we are, and I'm okay. Like I don't have to be the smartest guy in the room anymore, because if I am, I need to walk out to begin with.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Jaded Mechanic podcast. I'm over the moon happy about this one because this is a good friend of mine, newer friend of mine, but a good friend of mine that I have been dying to try and get our schedules aligned. I first saw him on YouTube, like I tend to find all of my, people I fanboy over. And I'm with Andrew Fischer of Facts Training. And I first saw Andrew with Royalty Auto Service. And so if you haven't checked out Royalty yet, Sherwood in the family, everybody really should. But I saw Andrew was in a lot of the videos, and I was just like, what a professional dude, the way he conducts himself. The whole shop is like that. So I was just immediately like, Andrew, we have to connect. So Andrew, how are you this afternoon, buddy?
I'm good, man. I'm doing really well. How about yourself?
I'm over the moon. Like I said, it's been a long time trying to get this set up, and yeah. I mean, I appreciate everybody's patience. You are a busy guy. Tell us kind of like what you're up to now, and
Man, that's kind of a loaded question. I'm kind of everywhere right now. Doing training, obviously, with a couple companies. Just got back from STX. Was teaching a few classes for CTI. Doing some stuff for WorldPack and some other companies. Just trying to better the industry as much as possible. Big believer in paying it forward. So we decided to start a company a couple of years ago called Facts, Fischer Automotive Consulting and Training Services. And it's really taken off. I'm going to be at Tools here in a couple of weeks, and we're going to be doing the Sunrise event in July, which I'm really looking forward to.
That's
and then
Arizona.
Yeah, got some other stuff in the works that hopefully it materializes and works out. Just want to bring some real world experience and try to help some folks, and realistically, it helps me too. Like I feel you become a much better technician when you have to be an instructor. It forces your hand a little bit. And truthfully, if I'm being honest with anybody, it's why I do it. It's not some of these guys, and I get it. Sometimes it's easy to get a little bit of an ego because, you become a face, right? And I'm trying my best not to let that happen. I just want to pay forward, be the guy that I always wanted to be. I've been extremely blessed in my life and career with great instructors and role models. So, just want to be that guy for somebody else, and see some light bulbs go off in the classroom. That's what it's about.
That's what always came across from you when I would watch you, is that the humility and the how do I say it? Just the average tech in the Bay kind of dynamic of you always came across right from the beginning. And I was just like, he's a super smart dude for sure. But I mean, there was never, and I'm not saying, don't say that there's a whole lot of people out there that have an ego. I'm not trying to say that.
No.
You just came across as very approachable. And that was what it was like for me, is like, I could sit and watch this guy, do these little 5-minute videos and teach this stuff all day long, because it's very relatable. And I mean, so you kind of, because you touch on a lot of stuff without really touching on it back and forth. And it's like, you say to me more than once, you would have never thought you'd be here. No. And you talked about, you've had some people would say they would have never thought you would make it to where you are. So kind of give us the backstory on Andrew and why, because to me, I think you're sharp as anything. But why do you have that kind of aw shucks mentality about it?
So you're gonna see a big burly tattooed guy get a little emotional here, so bear with me. So it kind of started out, my God bless his soul, my grandfather. He was a shade tree. He loved training, loved getting better, but he didn't do it professionally. He worked as a maintenance guy for a paint factory in South Chicago Heights, and Grandpa was an old Polak, couldn't read his handwriting. So awesome. I was like 6, 7, 8 years old, just learning how to write myself. And he would say, "Come on, kid, he'd call me Handy Andy, because we had the Handy Andy hardware stores back then.
Nice.
And he'd be like, "Come on, kid, we're going to class." And he took a lot of classes with Ken Zanders, and Ken, in my opinion, is probably the most overlooked trainer out there. I mean, he's just such a great guy, and anybody that's ever seen Kenny teach and then watches me, you get the white version of Ken Zanders. I do a lot of Kenisms just because, I mean, 30 years. I mean,
Yeah.
30 years I've been in Ken and John Thornton classes because of my grandfather, you know. So it's kind of cool, you know. I got to hang out and have breakfast with Ken at STX and talked with Pete Meyer, and you know, Kenny looked
Yes.
at Pete Meyer and goes, "You'd never believe I've known this kid since he was this tall," you know. So I got homeschooled. You know, we lived in the south suburbs of Chicago, and it was really changing. And my parents moved, which would have been my eighth grade freshman year,
Hmm.
and you take a kid out of the city and they put me in a farm country, you know, and I didn't do well. I did not do well adapting, so they put me into you know, I got homeschooled for high school and did not do good with that at all.
Hmm.
I kind of joke with people. I got an eighth grade education. You know, everything else I've taught myself on the fly.
So to back up a little bit, when your grandfather didn't work as a technician by trade, but
No,
was invested in all this training.
yes, it
Awesome.
it was a huge hobby for him. I mean, he was a product of the '50s, the hot rod revolution, right? And him and grandma got married in 1960. Grandma got pregnant short time after with my mom, and he had to put food on the table. He was working in a gas station, and he realized that he couldn't. In his words, he was never going to make it. He was too anal
Yeah.
as a technician, so he went into the maintenance side so he could still work with his hands. But he did run a, you know, a shade tree shop out of the garage for years and years and years, you know, and
Mhm.
he had, I mean, if it was a piece of equipment that was sold, I mean, when he passed away, I actually contacted Jim Linder because we had grandpa's distributor machine that I was just looking for a home for it because I was never going to use it, you
Right.
know. But that was just the man he was. He loved cars. Learning was a passion for him. I think, gosh, I mean, him and I, it was kind of cool when I first got into the industry in the early 2000s. We would go to classes together, you know, right before his health declined. But he
Mhm.
was he was an avid enthusiast.
So when you moved from the city out to the country, how far away was he from you then, or was it?
About an hour. So and I'll be honest, I ended up moving back
Mhm.
with him and my grandma, just because I wasn't adapting well. I was getting in a lot of trouble, doing things, you know, well,
Yeah.
most teenage kids do, you know, doing all the wrong things, and you know, Grandpa was, and my dad was around, you know, but I'm one of many kids. You know, there's six of us, so
Yeah.
you know, it's easy to fall through the cracks when you got a big family, and
It's yes.
Grandpa just kind of, you know, he was stern, but you know, that was my buddy, and you know, I decided watching him in the garage, this is what I wanted to do,
Yeah.
and at 16 years old, I went to Universal Tech.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
and that was fun. But again, you know, you had, you know, I never told anybody my age. I always kept
Mhm.
quiet, and a few of the instructors caught on quickly, and you'd get one or two that would give you some crap. You know, they hassle you a little bit, but again, you know, just being in the right place at the right time. One of the instructors, John Dixon, who's one of the head guys for Garage Gurus,
Mhm.
was one of my instructors, and you know, we just hit it off, and you know, he taught our drivability classes, and you know, on top of everything Grandpa did, I seen how great of a tech and a person I felt John was, and
Yeah.
I mean, he was probably my very first mentor in this business, and it's kind of cool when we're at training events. You know, I always seek John out just to say hey. We hung out for a couple minutes at STX, so again, just, you know, right people at the right time in my life. But
It's
you
fantastic.
know,
Yeah. Because it's almost like you could be, you know, because I don't want to say it with any kind of disrespect. You know, there's the older established people, but you're kind of like that, right on the cusp of that next generation of people coming up, right? And you've got ties to,
yes,
you know, Mr. Morton and all these, you know, Pete Meyer and all these kind of people. I think that's so amazing. Like I'm jealous in some ways, right? Because it's like I didn't know these people until Facebook, You know what I mean? So they gave you some crap at UTI because you were young.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I was 16, so you can imagine, you're with a bunch of boys, right, and a bunch of men, so
Yeah.
they would get their comments in. I had one instructor in particular that, hindsight years later, you look back at it and you're like, that dude was the way he was to me because maybe he saw something, right? But he was yeah, there's a lot of expletives I could use, but he was pretty harsh, and that was step one because he kept telling me, "Hey kid, you're not going to make it. You're not going to. This isn't for you. This isn't for
Yeah.
you." Because I made a lot of mistakes, man.
Oh,
Uh,
dude. Do you know how many times I've had employers tell me that?
yes,
It's
same.
crazy, right? Like, and you know, did I know how badly I was screwing up? Yeah, I did. But I kept coming back to like, there's some days where I'm brilliant. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
I have flashes of brilliance where it's got somebody else stumped and I just walk over and make it look simple, right? But then there'd be other days I would struggle with,
yeah,
like he'd have that engine out, in inside of a shift, and I'd be like the next day, before it was hanging from the picker coming out, and I would struggle with that, and that was always the yardstick, and it just drove me nuts.
yeah.
I struggled with it for so long. And I'm not talking early in my career. I'm talking like 10 years ago. Service manager at the dealer says to me, one dealer says, "I think you should never be anywhere but a small, tiny, little greasy shop. You just don't seem to have it." And I'm like, "You've seen my resume. You know my background, what I used to do. I'm struggling here, right? I'm struggling here with the." They didn't get it, and good for
No,
them. Good for them. It's a better place, to go on to where I am now. But so that guy that was hammering you, you think now that he saw the potential, but he
I
wasn't.
do.
Yeah.
I do. And I say this. I spent 2 years teaching high school automotive, and it kind of changed my perspective. I got to do a lot of inward thinking through all that, and I sat back one night and I was like, I bet that guy was the way he was to me because maybe he saw something. But for 15 years after the fact, like
Yeah.
I'd curse that guy if I heard his name. But again, I think things happen for a reason. I do believe in a higher power, and that I've been
Sure.
blessed, I've been lucky, whatever you want to call it, that people come around, and I state all the time, like the people that believed in me, I can't thank enough. The ones that told me I wasn't going to make it, I'm going to be honest, I thank them too because
Yes.
they're the ones that drove me. If you
Yeah.
told me I couldn't do something, I tell everybody I'm a Michael Jordan era kid, right? And growing up in Chicago, and one of my favorite sayings, and I'm going to paraphrase it real fast, is he failed over and over and over, and that's why he succeeds, right? So the one line I use in every class or any interaction I have with somebody is, my success, but if that's what you want to call it, is built upon years and years of failure.
Hmm.
And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that today. I'm okay with making a mistake, making a bad call today. It took a long time to get there, but
Yes.
here we are, and I'm okay. Like I don't have to be the smartest guy in the room anymore because if I am, I need to walk out to begin with.
I
And
just said that like a couple weeks ago, right? Like and it's so true in life. And not to cut you off, but I mean,
nope,
I've learned that the more I was in my own little bubble, my own little echo chamber, as like Lucas used to call it, and then it's like when he pushed me to network with more and more people, I'm like, wow, I'm the dumbest guy in a lot of rooms, and that's a good thing because it's like, I'm just sitting there. I learn by osmosis, right? Like I just listen all day long. I don't always say a whole lot when a technical subject's up. I just listen and
yeah,
watch, and that was huge for me, was to be able to be around these people that like, approach the same type of problem so many different ways. And that's the beauty of this industry. Like, Brian Pollock, same thing. He says, I effed up so much stuff, so wrong so many times,
yep,
and Brian is probably like, I want to say it's probably less than 10 still, you know what I mean? He's so sharp, but it's in his world. Yeah, I screwed up a lot of stuff, and I was the same way. I was never, I didn't knock it out of the park every time I went up to a diag. I just recently I had one that made me look stupid because I just overthought it,
yep.
just overthought it. And we didn't waste a ton of time. We didn't waste a ton of money, but it was just like my boss is kind of grinning at me going, "Oh, you say those coils never fail, eh?" And I'm like, okay, shut up. It's still a 23-year-old coil. Yes, it can eventually fail. But so after UTI, what is like you did you graduate? I guess I can
No,
ask.
no,
No, eh?
no. So, my brother, I kind of backed this up a little bit. My oldest brother, I'm the second oldest. My oldest brother had cancer when he was born, and and it was very rare. Don't ask me to tell you the name of it because I couldn't pronounce it, let alone spell it.
Yeah.
But he started getting some pretty substantial health issues once he got in his later teenage years, and they were trying to figure out what was going on, and it's all fixed now. But he was like having, yeah, we'll call them seizures, but it was
Mhm.
vitamin deficiencies that were happening because of results of him being sick. And then my dad, at the time, he was his early 40s, had his first heart attack. Dad never took, well, still doesn't take care of himself.
Yeah.
Um, so, between that and I'll be honest, I was 16. I had all this freedom.
Hmm.
Random drug tests aren't so random, and I just did a lot of stupid stuff, man. And I own it. I
Yeah.
have no problem talking about it with people. And they told me like, hey, we're gonna give you another shot. You either clean your life up or get the hell out of here. And at that point I'm 17. Give them the double middle finger and I'm out.
Yeah.
uh, Moved back home to try to help out at home as much as I could, which probably wasn't much looking back at it today. Maybe even was a hindrance at times.
Hmm.
Started going to work in the shops. I worked at a performance shop right when I got home. I learned a lot of great things. Mike was an amazing mentor. It taught me the mechanics of
Yeah.
fixing cars, from a business side, a lot of what not to do. I love Mike
Okay.
to this day. We still talk, but I tell him all the time some of my greatest lessons from him were the stuff not to do.
Yep.
And kind of did the typical. I bounced around a lot. Um, I was 17 when I went to work with who's now my father-in-law.
Mm.
And nope, that's a lie. That's a lie. I was 18
Okay.
and met my wife. Um, she got pregnant senior year of high school, so we were young kids. She had the baby, my oldest son, who will be 18 in a couple of weeks. So she had the baby one of the last couple of weeks of school for her senior year. So we did everything the hard way. Um, you know, Drew was born on Tuesday. I was signing on our first house on Thursday. So
Wow.
everything we did was backwards. So when I tell people I shouldn't be here, because at that point, I'm just trying to survive. I'm in survival mode. I'm just trying to put food on the table and pay the bills. And
But that's so many of us, Andrew. Like
yeah,
it's just how life goes, right? And this industry is so great because if you have that skill set that you can get and fix a car, you're never out of work. You know what I mean? You may not be landed where you're supposed to be. You may not be like you might hate the job. It might suck. We're underpaid, overworked. But man, you don't have to go without employment unless you choose to, right?
yeah.
Always that skill set's in such demand. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead. So
No, no, you're fine, man. I love hearing the perspective, but I bounced around. Did a couple stints here and there. Then I landed up at a pretty good shop for quite a few years, where I learned a lot from the man. I learned a lot about business. I kind of thought of him as a second dad.
right.
And just he went through some stuff in his life. Him and his wife divorced, and I seen a huge change. And at this point, I got a pretty big ego. I mean, I'm early 20s at this point, mid 20s. I got a huge ego. I left for a couple years, bounced around a lot. Ended up back working for him for a couple years, and I think it's just one of those things. My good friend Kevin Roth told me a while back. He's like, just think of life as seasons.
Yeah.
Sometimes that season's got to come to an end, and I recognize this. I didn't know what to call it. Went to work at the GM dealership
Hmm.
and loved it. I mean, I loved it. I was a transmission and diesel specialist. It was a small mom and pop's owner owned facility.
Right.
The people were amazing. Not too much shop politics. Every shop has them. But I was getting burnt out. I was getting burnt out real bad. I mean, I was to make the hours some of the other guys were. I was putting in 60 to make 40. You
Yes.
know.
Been there. Been
Yep.
there. Yep.
Especially you're doing transmissions and stuff. But you're learning on the fly,
Hmm.
and it had to be probably right around 2016, 2017. And at this point, there was this fellow not many people know, Brandon Stackler. he uh, he was doing a lot of stuff on social media. You know,
Yeah.
he would put up case studies and he'd really get you thinking. And Brandon really like ignited something in me. And a gentleman by the name of Dave Wagner posted on IETN about this event called Super Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my comment was, "Man, I wish I could pull that off right now. It looks like it'd be a great event." You know, and prior to this, I'm going to John Thornton classes all the time and things
Yeah.
like that because they're local, right? I'm in the Chicago area. I'm blessed. But David called me and he's like, "Hey, if we comp for you to come here, would you come here and just check it out?" And man, I took him up on that right then and there. And just to kind of back up a little bit, I was within days of leaving the industry. I was going to go to work
Really?
at the steel mills here in Northwest Indiana. I was just, you know, I was burnt out. I didn't think I was making the money I should. I felt like I just kept investing and investing and
Yep.
investing, and
Mm-hmm.
there was like no return. It was just a mundane. It was a job. It wasn't a career, you
Yeah.
know. And I get to go to Super Saturday. I met all the guys from Train by Tex at that one, who've quite a few of them become, you know, pretty good friends of mine over the years. Kind of took me under their wing a little bit, and you know, I got to hang out with Mario Rojas at that first one, Super Mario. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like starstruck, right? Like, you see all these guys like you really look up to, and this is where I met Jim Morton.
Yeah.
Um,
They're brilliant in that group. Trained by Text,
yeah,
they're brilliant,
yeah,
right?
they're great. They're great guys, you know,
Yeah.
and got to meet Jim. Got to really talk to Brandon, which was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and just started learning that this business you have to network.
Yeah.
That taught me it was time to network. And I came back home. I was totally ready to leave the dealership and go find home. That's what I
Yeah.
wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I get a phone call from a good friend of mine. Now he's a good friend, but again, people get put in your life you don't even realize, right? So one of the techs at the dealership, his neighbor is a good friend of mine, Jason Smith,
Mm-hmm.
and Jason owns quite a few. I think he's up to 6 or 7 shops now in our area. But he was filling in at the huge high school, couple towns over from here, because after 40 years, their shop teacher got fired.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's I mean, I could probably do a podcast on all that alone with you. But Jason knew my desires, and he called me up, and he's like, "Hey, I know you want to teach." Now, I never intended to teach. I just want to put that out there. I had
Mhm.
social anxiety, like hardcore social anxiety. I couldn't talk to people. I couldn't do this with you today.
Yeah.
Um, and he called me up. He's like, "Hey, man, like I think you need to call this guy." It was the principal of the high school. So we called them. They set up the interview, and for whatever reason, out of all these great guys and girls that they had apply for the job, they chose me. And
That's
it,
awesome.
it is, you know, and there's so many layers to that. Like, you take a job from a gentleman. Like, my saying is, I never killed Santa Claus, right? I wasn't the reason this gentleman lost his job. I wasn't the cause. I was the effect.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I was getting spit on in public, and that's not. I'm not exaggerating this. Like, I'd get hate emails. Like, the community loved that man.
Yeah.
And you want to talk about like just totally tearing you down on an emotional standpoint. Like, I don't think I ever really felt depression until then.
Right.
And like, man, and at the time, my wife's pregnant with baby number 4, and it just took a toll on us. It took a toll on our marriage, like hardcore, to the point that I mean, we split up. I was living on my own
Yeah.
and doing a lot of stupid stuff, and
Did you feel like when you came in as the new teacher, does it feel, I want to say, similar to like when you see the coach go with a new team, right? And
oh
you
yeah,
see the coach and he'll come out on the field and some people are booing him,
yes,
right? They're throwing drink cups at him and beer mugs and everything else. Like it must have felt like that, for you. And totally, you're not at fault. You know what
no,
I mean? You're not even at that point the leader yet. You know what I mean? You're just a person that's been put there to try and keep the program going, an important program.
yeah,
I
yeah,
want to I want to touch a minute on when you talked about the guy that brought you to Super Saturday.
yeah.
there's so many stories like that in our
There
industry,
is.
and there of people that just reach out to what essentially is a stranger, not necessarily a stranger, but somebody they don't know that well, and they're like, hey, here's an opportunity for you, and here's like I'm going to go into my own pocket. And you know uh, I've talked to people off the air about who has done that for me and who has offered, and I haven't had to accept. But it's just crazy amount of people. We do this in this industry. We don't even talk about it. We don't expect anything for it, for doing it. We don't want the recognition. It's just something that we all, right? You pay it forward, like you said. It's a beautiful thing. So you go to the high school, you're getting spit on. People got your picture on a dartboard, right? With
Literally, literally. I mean, I was getting. I wish it was kind of funny. The other night, I was going through my phone and I was looking at some of the old social media posts, and these people were just attacking me and my character, and they'd never met me at this point. But literally, a guy I knew that's in the industry saw me at a store and goes, "Hey, you took over. We'll just call him Mr. B. You
yeah,
took over for Mr. B." And I was like, "Yes, sir." And he literally spit in my face. And again, I'm a South Chicago guy, but now I represent the town and
yeah.
represent the school, and my family's there watching how I react, right? So you can't react the way you want to, and this went on for 6, 8, 12 months. Like it tore me down, like
Mhm.
oh the stories I could tell, getting emails, students recording you, trying to get you to slip up, I mean just horrible.
What did they
And
think that even if you slipped up, he's not coming back?
no, no, the damage was done.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, some things came out through all that. And I made it through. I made it through, and by year two, things were going really well. I thought, my personal life was a freaking mess, man. Like it was horrible. I mean, my wife and I weren't really speaking. Kind of lost my sons. They're mid-teens at this age, early teens, and dad's got his head so far up his own ass at this point that it was just horrible, dude. And I'm okay talking about it because I hope it helps somebody. Um, and you go through the motions, got involved with things and people I should not have. Ultimately cost me my job. Um, you know, it was during COVID anyway, so we're home teaching, and that probably forced me to really take a look at myself and take a look at my life and where I was at and like how destructive I became because I didn't know how to cope. I mean,
Yeah.
I think in this industry it's so taboo to talk about mental health and where you're at, and
Oh,
we're raised by men, right? Like
mhm.
cowboy the f up, shake
Yeah.
it off.
Yeah. Rub some dirt in it and get back on the
Yeah,
team. COVID taught me how to cope, and
yeah,
it showed me where what I thought was my way to cope. It showed me all the holes that were in it. Now I still hold on to some of those methods,
hmm
right? It's still part of who I am. I'm not going to take the way that I was, brought up and just be able to completely turn that page
right.
overnight. But it showed me that it was like you have to. I had to broaden out. I had to broaden out in terms of how I deal with things because some days something just would get me so angry. And I'm the same way. I look back at my Facebook. Facebook is a wonderful thing, not just to network with
It is.
people. But it's like a diary. It literally is. And I
It is
go back and I look at something, and I'm like, I know why I was that angry, you know, and
growth.
it's yes, and that's part of it, right? It's like rings on a tree, man. You just get another scar, you get a layer over top, and you just keep growing.
Yep.
And it is so important that you do that. So I don't ever fault anybody that goes through something anymore. It showed me so many because the people that come out on the other side, man,
They're the
like
tough ones. They're the
yes,
tough. I always thought that the guy that showed no emotion, the only thing I ever showed emotion at in front of my kids prior to all this was when my grandfather passed.
hmm
Other than that, like you'd ask if my boys were here, I'd put them on the mic right now. They would tell you like Dad was a hard ass.
yeah,
There's no emotion. Like it was just it was weakness in my eyes.
hmm
Um, and I've learned that it's strength. That's strength. Being weak is when you're strong,
yeah,
and just have to learn. I had to learn how to cope. Had to learn how to be a husband and a father all over again. Obviously, you're always gonna try to fix, and you're always trying to apologize and make better the things you did wrong, right? And that's something I'm like learning how to deal with still years later.
Yeah.
Luckily, she stuck by me, and she had no reason to. She probably should have. A lot of people will tell you she should have left. I'm telling you she should have left. It was just ugly. It was ugly, and I was self-destructive. And I'm more upset that nobody said, "Hey, dude, you're effing up pretty big here. You need to fix this." And so now I try to be that advocate. You know, if I see
Yeah.
somebody making a mistake or like they're really spiraling, like I'm okay with having a uncomfortable conversation with you. Like, listen, man, it's not worth it, you
Yeah.
know. And I'm proud of those scars. You know, I'll wear that crap with honor today.
And that's
Um,
sometimes the really hard subject to bridge, right? Because, and I used to be like, if I saw somebody spiraling, I would run because
yeah,
I did not want to get wrapped up in it. I did not want them to drag me down. Like, you know, it's like the drowning man. You know, like how many times do we see the person that's doing the drowning is holding the lifesaver, you know, the lifeguard underwater? You know what
yeah,
I mean? It's such a metaphor for life. And I would run from it. And now I realize that it's like I've learned how to hold people accountable, have the conversation, but keep myself at enough of a distance that it's
yes,
like it's not going to destroy me. It's
yeah,
going to break my heart to see what somebody else is going through, and but you're not going to be able to say to me, "You didn't." I wish you'd have been there because I'll be there. But you
yeah,
know, it's going to be it's I'm going to hold you accountable. I'm going to say, "Hey, you're being a jackass." You know,
yeah,
it's time to and it goes back to that. It's time to man up, you know? Like yes, life can suck and yes, you know, you feel like all this weight is on you. But that's just when you have to even become even more strong,
yeah.
you
I
know?
mean, it's
Vulnerability is not weakness.
no,
Vulnerability is strength. 100%. You know, admitting your flaws. We do it as in our career. I admit my when I make a mistake, I say sorry constantly. At
hey,
the
come
shop.
here, see what I did wrong. I'm gonna show you what I did wrong. Now, I'm a huge person on that. Like
Yeah.
if let's call it a bad diag. Hey
Mhm.
guys, come here. I'm gonna show you where I went down the rabbit hole, as
Yes.
Sherwood calls it,
Yes.
or you know, I made I made a bad call just because I got stupid. You know, and
Mhm.
sometimes that happens. I'm totally okay with that.
So did you feel like when the teaching gig went away, did you feel like you must have been pretty hard on yourself?
Whew. Oh man, I never loved anything as much as I did teaching, right? Like other than my kids, obviously,
Right.
right? But what I've learned, so I thought that was my identity because I'm going to tell you, I immersed myself into it and fixed or thought I was fixing a storied program that fell off the rails and needed help. And I think looking back, I was what those kids needed to get through it,
Right.
but more importantly, they were what I needed.
Yeah.
In some of these kids now, I mean, they're my friends. I mean, I got quite a few of them. They're early 20s now, and their careers have blossomed. And you know, whether it's in the automotive industry or not, they were a bunch of great kids. And you know, I had to learn early on. I couldn't save them all,
Mhm.
but I could be a role model, right? So I tried to keep my spiraling hidden from them. But I think realistically, some of them saw it,
Yeah.
and I'm embarrassed, you know, about that today. When you sit that back and you think about it, I'm embarrassed about a lot of the things I did. You know, and more importantly, I'm more upset that you know the people that were in power at the school saw it, and instead of trying to be helpful, it was easier to kick me to the curb. And all these so-called friends that I made in that area,
Yeah.
I talked to maybe two of them, you know, but you know, if their car was broke, there they were. So that was a great learning experience that, you know, if you get fired tomorrow from most places, you're expendable. But I felt I lost my identity. I fell into a pretty deep and dark place for quite a while. Um, and I just start clawing out of it. You know, just
Mhm.
I decided one day I still to this day cannot drive past that school. And you're
Yeah.
talking years removed. I mean, this would have been 2020, I believe, when all this happened. So you're talking 4 years later. I cannot drive down US 41 and past that school
Yeah.
without. I think I've done it twice, and just the emotions overcome me because you know it was my identity for so long, and I thought I did a good thing, and then somebody I knew and trusted ended up taking over for me, and I've always felt that was a backhanded backdoor move.
Mhm.
It is what it is, you know. I'm super proud of overcoming that adversity today and being where I'm at, and um, you know I think it's great. I try to talk to as many people as I can about it now. And honestly, I probably owe that to Hawken Light. Hawken
Yeah.
become one of my best friends. Another guy that doesn't get the credit he deserves in this industry. But him and I hit it off again. Right place, right time, right stepping stones. And he, with his wife being
I
what she
was
does for a living,
just going to say they are a power couple within
they
the
are.
industry, right? In terms of how what she is such an expert on, and now it trickles through him. You know what
Yes.
I mean? And it's like I listen to the episodes he's done with Matt, and I listen to her episodes that she's done with Matt, and I'm
Yeah.
like, God, they're what an amazing couple, right? What they're able to share,
Yeah.
with us. I mean, we're so blessed to have them.
We are.
You
We
know,
are.
there's so many people like that in this industry. It's the same as like Paul and Kirsten. You know,
Yes.
Kirsten. I keep calling her Kirsten. Why do I do that? And we're so blessed. And then you realize there's so many couples like that in this industry. You know what I mean? Like it's not.
No. Well,
Uh, it's just they're all over the place, and they're
well,
not the Burrises and so many people that it's like that's why it's so refreshing to me. The more I network, like you said, the more I come away just invigorated, like with not just the automotive but of life,
life.
right? Of relationships and love and faith, and because I see it. I'm around it all the time, and then I come back to my little corner of the world, and I forget that it's so out there. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's just we haven't put it up on that platform, and I'm if I can find a way to get it there, and I think Paul and Kristen are doing that. But what amazing, yeah, Hawkins, a beautiful human being,
Yeah,
beautiful.
well, and the saying goes, behind every strong man's a stronger woman, right?
Yes,
And I'm a big believer in that, and he's been a great advocate. He's one of those guys that there's a few of us. We got a little friend group. There's about 5 or 6 of us in a group that we're all really really close, and
yeah,
I don't talk much on the forums. I don't talk much in the chat rooms anymore. I just kind of like keep to myself because, like we talked earlier, it's easy to get fired up and upset
yeah,
with people for not
yeah,
trying to help themselves first. But like in Hawkins' case, one, he holds me accountable. I mean, he's not afraid to tell me I've made a mistake. So right away, him and Scott Hicks is in on that group too. I know,
yes.
I know, Scott. I love Scott like a brother.
Well, he's another.
Couple other guys,
Yeah,
and whether it be Hawkins, Scott, John, Sean Hill's in on that too, Mike Black Canary. I mean, these dudes they've become my brothers, right? But
yeah,
the cool part is they hold you accountable. Like, hey, dude, you are really effing up. You need to take a break,
yeah,
or you need to look in the mirror. But we're taught not to do that, and hopefully if this helps one person, you talk about, you did stupid stuff, right? Whether it's infidelity, alcoholism, drug addiction, you're not alone. Every
no.
one of us in some capacity has been through something, so don't be afraid to lean on people and ask for help. And
We're all
uh,
trying to cope, right?
we are.
That's the thing. It's just coping mechanisms, and it's like when we learn to do how to do that healthier, then and mine is like I'm knock on wood. I'm not into the drugs and I don't drink hardly anything at all. Mine's food, man. I feel so much
Yeah, I
better
get it,
when I
man.
eat, right? Like and it's like I eat because of the taste, but then so
Hmm.
many times then it's like the after feeling is terrible. And then I'm like, I gotta get my head wrapped around this, and I
Guilt.
gotta get in front of it. Yeah, but it's
Guilt.
like, you know, I I I keep saying that. Well, there could be a lot of worse things. At the end of the day, that's just a cop out.
It is.
You know what I mean? There's just a cop
It
out.
is.
It's about standing up and handling your shit. As my
Yep.
ex used to say, handle your shit.
Yep.
And,
Well, Jeff, do you have kids?
I do, yeah, but
So,
we're kind of she's 23 and spent a lot of time with her mom, so we don't really there isn't the bond there that should be there. Is what
understand.
I'll say that. So I mean it's tough, but I mean I know I see so many other people that sometimes the only thing that keeps them going is the fact that it's like the number one priority is to be a good parent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everything else can be falling around in front of them, and as long as they're focused on that, and that's pretty cool. You
Well,
know.
and I tell everybody, for me, I got 4 kids.
Mhm.
My boys, Drew, the oldest, will be 18 in just a couple weeks. Matthew, they're Irish twins. They're 8 months apart.
Nice.
That's my $1 million baby.
Yeah.
And it is possible. Apparently, I was just irresistible. Mom couldn't leave me alone. Um, and then we got our baby girls who are 5 and soon to be 7. But for me, when all this was going on, I was looked at my boys because my boys are my best friends. Like I don't subscribe to that shit when people say that you can't be a friend and a parent. I disagree. I
Mm-hmm.
think you can. You just got to have the boundaries and know that you are the disciplinary. But I was
Yes.
looking at my boys and they're in their early teenage years at this point when all this was going down, and I could fail anybody. Like I don't care if I fail you. I just
Yeah.
don't. But I can't fail them. And they were the driving factor of me saying, one, I was drinking way too damn much. Two, I was doing a lot of stupid stuff that I want them to be good husbands and be good fathers. And how the hell can I sit up there and tell them they're screwing up when I'm doing the same thing, right? So they became the driving force to get everything right and to make life better. And again, like I'm not ashamed. I'm
Mhm.
embarrassed a little bit, to have those conversations, but my boys are old enough now. We've had those conversations of what happened.
Yeah.
Um, I want them to know, like, it's okay. You're gonna screw up, right?
Yeah.
Just don't do the same things I did. Be better.
That's going to wrap up this week's episode of the Jaded Mechanic podcast with Andrew Fischer. Part 2 coming up next week. See you then.
Hey, if you could do me a favor real quick and comment on, and share this episode, I'd really appreciate it. And please, most importantly, set the podcast to automatically download every Tuesday morning. As always, I'd like to thank our amazing guests for their perspectives and expertise, and I hope that you'll please join us again next week on this journey of change. Thank you to my partners in the ASOG group and to the Changing the Industry podcast. Remember what I always say, in this industry, you get what you pay for. Here's hoping everyone finds their missing 10mm, and we'll see you all again next time.